Everyone says technology is getting better. But if that's true, why does every security tool feel kind of like a panic attack wrapped up in a pretty dashboard? Today, we're talking about the illusion of safety. That's an uncomfortable truth that brilliant cybersecurity tech still fails if humans can't actually use it. Joining us is someone who lives at the center of that tension, Jennifer Von Kainold, a cybersecurity product strategist who has made a career translating impossible SME demands into tools real humans can understand. She's led multi platform unifications, driven secure by design product vision, and spent countless hours in the trenches watching users struggle with tech that was supposed to protect them. Jen is a rare voice who can explain not just how security products work, but why so many of them fail the people they're meant to keep safe. Jen, thank you for joining us today. We are really excited you're here. Dustin and I have been looking forward to having you on for a while now. It's great. Thank you so much. Talk to us a little bit about how you got one of the front things that we really like to do here on Legitimate Cybersecurity is talk about how people get into cybersecurity because we've found, and Dustin can back me up on this, no individual has had the same trip. Everyone's had a completely different experience. And I think that's one of the cool things about cyber, right? Because there's a lot of, we'll use puns, back doors and front doors. And actually there's very few
So,
front doors, right? Tell us about how you learned about cybersecurity, how you got into it, and give us a little background there.
yeah, I'd be happy to. So, first of all, I have some pretty deep roots in cybersecurity and just in computer engineering. Actually, my dad was an early computer engineer. I grew up in Switzerland and I used to go to work with my dad. And I can't really tell you what he did because but I remember it like going into the cooled computer rooms, open the door, it was a blast of cold air. I would have my mom always like, bring a sweater. And I used to go work with my dad and he would just be there coding and doing things, but I was so inspired. I would just sit next to him as a little, like, tiny little girl and smash the keyboard because I wanted to be like him so badly. And he's the first person to teach me some computer languages. He taught me basic, and he actually taught me the fundamentals of Fortran, if you can believe it. And it was just super
That's
cool.
awesome.
I know, right? Like, I wish someone would have told me that was valuable. I would have continued to work on that. But he eventually got into working a little bit on the cryptography side and encryption side with Swiss banks, which sounds like super, it's super exciting, but it was super exciting work. And so he really inspired me. I come from a whole family of people who are interested in computer engineering and in math. So early on, but if, I was really inspired to get into STEM. So here's the funny thing. I don't have a computer engineering degree. I don't have an engineering degree at all. I had a very
One of us.
sideways, yeah, sideways, get around, like really interested in science and the scientific method. And I actually sort of early on started working in genomics. And I was at MIT's Whitehead for biomedical research. I just really like complicated problems and figuring out solutions. And I realized that can apply to a lot of fields. And I think that's why I eventually found myself where I am now. I took that experience, leveraged that into doing some sort of consulting business and very product management, project management adjacent. And in my consulting work is actually where I discovered my passion for cybersecurity because I was consulting for small businesses and for nonprofits and standing up systems for them, standing up business processes for them, and they completely unprepared from cybersecurity. And so I learned in the trenches and taught myself a lot. And I eventually, just through networking, really started to meet more and more people in cybersecurity and through some of my personal experience as well. I was like, this is cool. I want to do more of this and I want to educate. So I want to talk about like how important also groups are for this. So Stacy Champagne, who's first group was called Hacker and Heels, is actually where I got my first certification in cybersecurity. She had a study group. She was really motivating. Like, if you did this first, you got a t-shirt, and you guys, I'll do anything for a t-shirt. So I
Wow.
got my first cybersecurity certifications through her group. It's called the Women's Cybersecurity Alliance now. And it's through her that I realized like cybersecurity is really big. There's so many different things that you can do within it. She really was like specialist in insider threats and
Mm,
investigation. And I still wanted to build computer and software products, you guys. I'm really passionate about it. Um, my background professionally is also heavily in the user experience and outcome. Like, it's not just like what's the data and what kind of flashy dashboard can you make out of that data, but why? Why and how and what's the outcome and how is someone going to use this? Because you can throw a lot of data at someone and it may be meaningful to you as the subject matter expert, may be exciting to the company who's like, we got this cool dashboard. And the user sitting there going, what do I do? What does this mean? This is my sleep paralysis demon, you guys. I joke about this, but anytime I work on something, I'm like, does this the end user going to be able to use this to make meaningful decisions? And I'll tell you, in cybersecurity, this is especially a passion of mine because it's so critical. It's mission critical.
it
I got
is.
to do
It is.
my job because someone's making some big decisions.
I like that you referenced it as your sleep paralysis demon because you're not the only one who's got those.
Yeah.
Dustin, in fact, I am going to do a shout out to Dustin's other podcast that he has called Paranormal Outsiders. And sorry, Dustin, I'm a few behind,
What?
but if you
I
have
didn't
not
even
covered
know
this,
this
Go ahead.
existed.
Yeah.
yeah, if you have not covered the sleep
We've been
paralysis
on
demon yet,
hiatus for a while, but yeah.
I'm waiting for it. I'm ready to hear the sleep paralysis demon episode if that's not there yet, because I got
It's
to tell you,
there.
I get sleep paralysis and I hate it. I like that you okay. There's two things you brought up there that I want to kind of drill down a little bit on. And I do want to come back to you mentioned networking a lot, and I think networking is huge, and it's something that I think is not valued as much, especially after the last 5 years. I think when we had the pandemic, it kind of took a backseat to an extent, and we found other ways to do it, but there's still no everyone there's a saying out there, there's no substitute for experience, but it's also the other one I like is it's not what you know, it's who you know, which can be a problem sometimes because if you know a lot of people but you don't
Mm,
know anything, it can be an
right.
issue. But to what we're talking about here, I like the example you used where you can make something that's really great and really awesome, and then people either don't know what to do with it, right? Or don't know why it's here, or can't appropriately use it. And I have a few theories on that, and I want to know your thoughts. A lot of tools, and I'll be fully on the table, right? I've talked more than once. I think I've mentioned I have ADHD on both on this podcast and other instances. So I try to take that into factor. But there's been more than one instance where I'm like, oh, cool tool. And I just start pressing buttons. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. What is this and so forth. What is the, and, or I've gone looking for manuals or something that I try to find that's not as intuitive. What do you think are the top biggest things that keep people from adopting a tool that when you actually figure out what it is, it's awesome, but for some reason gets a lower adoption rate, especially with security, because as you say, it's mission critical, right? We need to make security more comprehensible to people. You see this a lot with Siemens SOAR interfaces, where it doesn't matter all these things that can happen if it's not used right. I'll use a separate example. I think Salesforce is great, but the amount of connectors that are out there, and also how they nickel and dime separately, but it's overwhelming. So in your experience, what's the best way to make effective tools just used, I guess?
So you need to talk to users. And this is often the part that is missed is that, people who have a high level of expertise are like, I know what tool I should build. You're building it for you. You have a PhD or a master's or you have 10 years in. Most users aren't you. Most end users are struggling through something or are new to security. Most users are learning the subject matter at the same time that they're trying to learn the tool,
Oh,
right? So
yeah, I
if
like
you
that take. Dustin, there's been times where I've not known what I've been doing until the tool has made me realize, oh, this is a fundamental tenet of cybersecurity. Oh,
exactly.
sorry, keep going.
So
That's a good take, Jen.
I'm gonna take a personal experience. I was in a risk analysis with Pam Schwam. Everyone knows Pam. Pam's great.
Yeah,
What would Pam
love him.
do?
Brilliant.
We had we had a great interface, right? That we this software with this great interface to do risk analysis for a business. And here's the user on there and Pam, you know, we get to the first question and the user's like, I don't even know what this means.
Oh,
I don't even
I
know what this
believe it.
is asking.
yeah.
So Pam's there. She's a subject matter expert. She's like, this is what this means. Okay, so most of us don't get to have a Pam in our pocket, even though I would love that. They could just educate
Be
me
amazing.
constantly about Pam in our pocket, like tell you cybersecurity stuff all the time. Um, but we just don't have that. Most users are just sitting in front of an interface and trying to understand. Even SOC analysts, even, CISOs, they get in front of an interface and they're like, what does this actually mean for me and the outcome I'm trying to achieve? And that's where a lot of times the disconnect is. I also think we have in this like world of like just easy button pushing this dashboard, we've forgotten that people still need to be educated along the way and
Yeah.
guided. And so I'm very, very passionate about instructional design that goes along with any kind of interface that you're putting in front of someone. And a lot of times people are using UIs, they're using cybersecurity software, to your point, kind of in a panic. They're like, oh no, I gotta pick up this thing, whether that's like, I gotta assess risk, or I gotta make sure all the alerts are actually firing, or how do I even contain this, right? They're in a stressful situation. It's very important that software help them through that situation in an intuitive way. And so frequently software is not designed that way. It's just designed to meet a technical spec. It's an engineer or someone who says, oh, it's, well, if you just do this, you got your system under control. Instead of talking to the user who's like, I open my software, I open my computer, and I'm looking for the highest sort of criticality, highest, like, what is going to bring my system down today? I don't need all these other
Yeah.
dashboards. Right?
Yeah.
So you've got to interview users. You've got to interview users for those and you have to be clear about personas and use cases. Because what a CISO wants to see, that's a particular user persona, is different than a brand new entry level L1 SOC analyst or someone who is just trying to do, who might be a consultant doing your risk analysis or a financial auditor or a compliance auditor. These are different personas. You can't build software just for one person.
Yeah. And so do you think that like maybe one of the biggest struggles that, and I think I've seen you do this before, for me at least, is that we have engineers, right? And we have software developers and who are, I'm not going to say everybody's like this, but notoriously, unless you have an SDLC or something like that, they're not very security minded people. And so you have to explain to somebody who is incredibly technical something else that is incredibly technical, maybe just not in their wheelhouse. And so do you find like, would you say that's kind of I don't want to say the hardest part of your job, but is that, you're, because you're working with two very technical sides of the same coin, right? Is that kind of where, where your daily interactions kind of help with, producing something that's meaningful? And not only that, but you're also working with different levels, right? So you're working with on obviously on the engineering side, right? You're helping the software developers understand what needs to be done. Then over here, you're working with multiple levels of expertise and also multiple levels of understanding of cybersecurity and different functionalities within cybersecurity, right? So, like, we say cybersecurity, and like, of course, we're a legitimate cybersecurity is this, right? It's this world, it's this huge thing. But you're talking about, okay, SOC alerts and also incident response and also vulnerability management and also GRC and all like, fitting all these things into different aspects. So sorry, that was a really long-winded question to say, like, would you say that's one of the more difficult things that you have to do throughout your day? Or is that like, oh no, that's actually the easy part. The hard part is something I'm not even thinking about.
I think so. I'm going to go ahead and reframe that. And that's the part that I love about this job. So I'm also a polyglot. And I think I've talked about that I speak multiple languages.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, I had this role of constantly having to translate for everyone around me
Okay.
because, I knew certain languages and people are like, so to this day, I go back to Switzerland and like I'm translating between family members, like American family members with my Swiss family members and back again. And really, in product management, that's what you have to do. You
Makes
have to
sense.
listen to one language over here and go, okay, I see what you're saying, and I might want to directly translate that like requirements, right? You put it through almost like your translator, where you then have to write it in technical language for engineers. Now, remember, engineering owns a technical solution. I work with incredibly talented engineers. What
Absolutely.
I have to do is make the outcome crystal clear. I need this to perform in this way with this output. Here's the design from user experience design, makes it very clear. Um, and we need to take the user through this journey for this outcome. And they have the technical solution. But you're speaking three different, and then you have to speak another language to marketing. So you're speaking three or four languages as a product manager. You're taking technical specs, you're taking the cybersecurity language, you're taking then the language of users who are saying, I just need this to fix my problem. I need this 800 alerts to be 10 alerts. Just fix it. And then you have to talk to the engineers and go, this is the way I want it to look and function so I can meet the requirements that I got from you guys, like matter experts, the user, and ultimately everyone else involved in the project. So it's hard, but that's the thing I love because I've been translating stuff my whole life. This job
Yeah.
is great. Yeah.
Well, that brings up another question because one, it's a very excellent and comprehensive answer that I think is pretty fantastic and often overlooked, the translation of the data to the actual audience that's being given. But now
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I've been to Switzerland, and there is no language that I'm aware of that says this is Swiss because I went there and then I found German, I found French, and then I spoke English and sometimes understood me. Well, how do you know when to use which?
Okay, so Switzerland has four national languages. We have German, French, Italian, and a language called Romansh, which is very similar to
That
Latin.
sounds like a salad dressing. I'm sorry. What sorry, that was I'm sorry if that was insulting. It said
Not at all.
Romansh? What is
Rom-
Romansh?
Romansh is actually very similar to Latin. It is spoken in eastern Switzerland, and it is spoken by less than 2% of the population, but it stays alive. It's considered it's the closest thing we have to Latin that still survives. It's
Okay, first
brilliant.
of all, that's an amazing fact. Thank you. I didn't even
You're
know that
welcome.
existed, and I'm really glad that it does. Okay, sorry. Please continue. How do you know is there like quadrants now that there's four official ones? Like that was the part that confused me.
There are different geographic locations that have so Western Switzerland, Geneva, the Jura, they all what we call das Walche. They the Valleys, a lot of places that you guys are like, oh, that's really beautiful. They make watches there. They speak French.
It's all beautiful.
So the Zurich, St. Gallen, the places that are known for banking, those are German speaking areas. And it is true that most Swiss speak three or four more languages, and they just switch contextually depending on where you are in the region. You're like, if you grew up going 50 kilometers in one direction and they speak something different, you just learn how to adapt. And of course, we have the Italian speaking part of Switzerland. So that's down towards like Lake Como, which is
Yeah,
right on the other side of the border. I think multilingualism. So I will make a little analogy here. Multilingualism really challenges your brain to think on different planes and how you communicate to people. I think this is critical in cybersecurity. I think it's critical in
ooh,
product and
yeah.
software.
Elasticity almost.
And my passion for languages translates over into computer languages too. We have to be flexible. We're going to be forced to try, what worked before is not going to work, in the future necessarily. And systems are always updating and upgrading to different languages. So kind of, I see it as a lot of fun to learn languages, both the ones that we use as humans to communicate with each other and the ones we use to communicate with computers.
So one, that was an excellent answer. Thank you. Because that has actually kind of vexed me for some time. Beautiful. Switzerland's
Sorry.
one of, arguably, actually, I would say the most beautiful country I've been to. But I felt like a complete doofus going around being like, I don't know what language I'm not speaking correctly right now. So
It's
thank you for
okay.
that. But
No.
I like the answer of the flexibility. Do you think there's a point with certain then products that are too flexible that can provide? And the
Yes.
example I always like to use in this instance is Archer. Archer's cool, Archer's a lot. And for anyone who's listening or watching who doesn't understand what Archer is this tool that has been bought and then sold and then bought and then sold by many companies. And in theory, it is the perfect GRC tool, governance, risk, and compliance, for organizations that want to appropriately implement their cybersecurity and security programs. The struggle I had and where I started crying when I first used it is not a single individual tool, because it is so flexible that you have to define every aspect basically of the type of risk you're facing and the type of organization it's applying to and how it affects. And it has this flexibility, but in making itself so flexible, it's so overwhelming that if you do not, in my opinion, have a team of people dedicated to working on this tool, it's not going to give you the real value to your organization. So, Jen, with tools like that, trying to make sure that one, it's flexible enough that it can meet the right audience and can meet multiple audiences, but two, not getting to that craziness level. Like, what is there a sweet spot there? And if there is, what are the things that you would say define that sweet spot?
That's a great question. I think you really need a user journey, right? You need to prompt the user at the beginning. What kind of outcome do you want? This is why I'm very
Oh,
passionate. Like, it's always weird to me when software companies don't have a user experience team. So, designers and researchers who are really tasked with user empathy and like figuring out what does that journey, the user, and you start with the outcome. What do you want to accomplish? Right? What is a lot of times in user experience and even in user journey mapping, we talk about what is the job to be done. You sit down, you open a software, and you're like, I have a job to be done. And the software is like, we could do 30 jobs. But then it doesn't prompt you, just see what I did there. We can do 30 jobs. Okay, go. But really, what you need is to be able to be like, what outcome are you seeking? I think we're going to really see this transformed in agentic AI, because agentic AI is going to prompt you and allow you to use your own words to talk about the outcome that you'd like to achieve. Now, it's not doing the thinking for you, it's simply going to help you through the journey to that outcome so that you can, do your task faster or better. We're not getting rid
Is
of the human. We're facilitating the human. We're kind of like augmenting the human. I love sci-fi. Don't get me
she
started on
gets it,
Star Trek.
Dustin. She gets it. Sorry, keep going.
We're augmenting the human. So the software, whether it is an agentic AI interface or whether it's just a regular user, it's really just about the user journey. So we don't want to get hung up like, is it a dashboard? Is it a prompt screen? We got to focus on the problem. This is the problem. The user wants this outcome. This is a job the user needs to do. Therefore, let's work on that problem. So, in user experience and in good product management is really the scientific method. We say, here's your problem statement, right? In science, we start with a problem statement. This is the problem. I want to accomplish, let's say, I want to accomplish a risk assessment, or I want to get ready for a compliance audit. Start with the problem and then you get granular. What's your hypothesis? In order to do this, so in order for me to get ready for my compliance audit, I need to be able to, and then you list out what those things are. You have a problem, you have a hypothesis, and then you go and test it, right? This is why we come back with test screens and we go back to users and go, okay, you told us this is the job to be done. Here's some test screens. Does this fill your need? And they might say like, close or not really. And yeah, you just go over, you test and test to get to the point where you're like resolving now. You're going to need to, you know, go through probably a couple of tests, especially for a complex problem. But in the end, is to design something that's end to end and intuitive. And that's a tricky word, intuitive. What's intuitive to me might be not as intuitive to you. And
Subjective.
therefore, right? Because someone at Archer is going like this. I don't know why anyone wouldn't get this, right? Like,
but that's a good question then, Jen, because this is something that I kind of struggle with sometimes, where I get you have to translate between engineers, GRC people, vulnerability management people, SOC analysts, incident response folks. I get that there's a lot of different facets to this, and where is the line drawn though? So, like, for example, not saying this happened to me recently, but I recently had somebody, ask me like, well, can you put a narrative around why vulnerability management is important to cybersecurity? And I was like, no. If you don't understand that very basic fact, we need to go
No,
back to
dummy.
square one here. Like there's no way that we can that we can kind of so but where is that cutoff, right? Where is that okay, we don't need to make a narrative for everything. Like this is a cybersecurity product, or this is a widget, or this is whatever it does. And if you're in there, that tool, there's got to be I get that we need to train and people need to learn. Maybe not in the tool though, right? Because we don't want to teach buttonology. We want to teach fundamentals, right? Or
Yes. Yeah.
fundamentals should be taught, I guess I should say. Maybe not. Maybe not the product needs to teach that, but we need to teach fundamentals of certain things. And I feel like there's a cutoff point there. What do what from your kind of perspective? Where is that cutoff point where it's like, well, this is a cybersecurity product, so we're going to have like certain functionality in it. And maybe like you might have a customer who's like, well, I don't want to have to do A, B, or C, and it's like, let's take asset management. I don't want to have to do asset management. I want you guys to do it.
No
for
one
me.
wants to do asset management, Dustin. It's boring.
Right. Yes,
I
I
know.
get it. I
So where's the
understand.
cutoff? I guess is my question there for you.
Well, I really think so. When we talk about, just as there are many different fields in cybersecurity, there are many different cybersecurity products. There is not one product to rule them all, at least the one I've seen yet. Like, another sci-fi reference. Sorry, guys. I'm like super nerdy,
No,
but
we get it.
there's not, there's
Hey, what?
not,
Real quick, let me pause. Sorry. She said there's no one to rule them all, but then said sci-fi, Dustin. I thought that was
no, oh
fantasy,
no,
my
that's
hobbit
fantasy,
friend.
right?
Yes.
Always put sci-fi fantasy in the same. I got you, Jen. You're good.
No, I
Thank
get you
you.
too.
Thank you for covering me.
He's a real
Thank you
Lord of
for
the
covering
Rings
me.
enthusiast, and I wanted to make sure that it was more to see if he would lose his mind.
No,
I
I'm so
agree
glad
with
he's
you.
giving me a pass on that.
Well,
Good.
Gandalf was
We're good.
actually an alien, so it's fine. He just doesn't like that discussion.
God.
So you would have been fine either way. Because Gandalf came from space, Dustin. Anyway, continue, Jen.
Do you know? So let's go really weird here.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
So
Let's deviate.
Tolkien spent a lot of time in Switzerland and
Mhm.
based Rivendell on Lauterbrunnen in Switzerland. So y'all can
I knew it.
check me on that one.
I believe it.
I believe it. I don't need to fact check you. I
100%.
100% believe it.
Because you have
Yeah.
all the bucolic mountains and all the pleasant people. And I'm sure I'm overgeneralizing, and I apologize to any Swiss I offend by telling you you're pleasant. But if anyone's ever gone, and if you, it was the sleeper hit for me because I didn't know what to expect because being a certain type of American, I don't have necessarily all the understandings of all the cultures. So when I got there, I can totally believe that is like where they got Rivendell from. That's a fantastic. Thank you. I did not know that.
Anyway, all right, back on track.
Anyway,
Back
cyber.
on cybersecurity software. I think your question's really relevant, Dustin, in the sense that so a lot of the last few years, you've seen a lot of companies who are like, we can do everything, but that's like saying that a person could do everything in cybersecurity, and you have subspecialties. You have your GRC people, you have your SOC analysts, you have your insider risk, so on and so forth, right? And it's hard because you have to at some point say, what is this software going to do for you?
Mhm.
And it is huge to try to think of just like you would imagine that one person could be a specialist in all. Just look at the certifications from ISC2 or anywhere like that. There are just a lot of subspecialties. You're not going to sit there and get a certification in every one of those categories. And so I'm here to say I don't think you're going to find a software that does all that all on one platform in a single pane
Absolutely.
of glass.
Yeah. So is that the that's like for you then? So that would be like, well, we're not, here's what we're focused on, right?
Yes,
So
I think most places have to focus. They have to focus so they can make that user journey work for the outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? So it's not to say that vulnerability management isn't important or anything. It's to say this purpose of this software is this particular outcome. So sometimes that means we're going to get vulnerability data in through the data layer to inform other decision-making processes in the software, or it's a vulnerability management software, or it's something else. Do you know what I mean? It's a different kind of platform because perhaps a compliance, software that can do different kind of compliance work. Do you need to hook that up to detections? You wouldn't do that, right? You're trying to achieve a particular outcome outcome for that particular user.
But I think some people would want to do that, right? And so that's the question is like, you have a user who's like, I'd really like for this to be tied to, because I have to count metrics for, some control in 800.171 or some control in some framework that I'm using. And so I do want that tied to my compliance. And I do, everybody kind of wants a platform that does. And I get why. I get that it makes life easier and that you don't have to go to, you don't have to log into 8 different consoles to try to find the information you want to find. But yeah, I think I don't know, and maybe you've probably seen this more than I have, but I do see that in people where they're like, oh, I want it to do everything I want it to do, and it's like, great, so we'll do some of that, but not everybody wants that, right? So how do you make a platform that's I don't want to say agnostic, but something along those lines? It's not it's not geared towards one specific underlying technology, group of people, public versus private sector, I guess that's it. That's the end of my thought.
Yeah, there's many.
Like,
So here's
yeah,
what I would say. Like, first, let's go back to user personas, because you can have a software that addresses different personas, right? So we talk about the CISO, or we talk about, a compliance professional or a risk professional. One software through RBAC or through role assignment can say, like, this is what you're going to see if you're this type of person. If you're a Frank of the world, or you're a Pam of the world, or you're this, or a Stacy of the world, this is the type of data that you want to see. So when you log in, you have a role assigned to you, and that role allows you to see what is relevant to you. That said, if like we have done this research and 98% of people want to see all this data, and you, Dustin, are
sure,
like, well, but I
yeah,
also want this. Again, this is where I would plug Agentic AI, and where the flexibility of having a prompt interface or a correlation interface that takes you just outside of the usual user journey, keeps you on that journey, but allows
mm,
you to, for example, build a custom dashboard where it's pulling data that maybe a lot of other people don't want to see. Right? So I'm getting really, like, I'm talking very big, basic terms, but, you know, um, bespoke sort of dashboards are probably where we're going.
hmm,
How we
yeah,
generate them, because one dashboard does not make everybody happy. Trust me, this has been so much of my career,
we know,
not even just in cybersecurity, just in general, right? It's
yeah,
like, that's great. That financial data is great, but I also want it. There's always someone who's like, and I also want to see this.
yeah,
Well, really hard. It's a burden then, like not a burden, but the time and cost it takes to be like, oh, we're going to build one more widget, right? Because you're like, you have engineers' time. People don't realize it's expensive to build these things. And then
mhm,
someone's always like, and I also want to see this. Um, I think that's what makes this job super exciting. But I do think this is where changes in how we build software and make it a little bit more flexible for the end user will meet those needs for that user. So I think there's a lot that uh people want to talk about, autonomous SOC, or they want to talk about like AI, like getting rid of people. And I actually think AI is going to be used for exactly that problem that you're talking about, Dustin. The This software meets almost all my needs, except for I kind of need to build a couple of things for myself that I want to see. And I know the data is there. I just need a
mhm.
way to visualize it. And I think that's where we're going to be really seeing the big transformation.
I like that.
So
Yeah, that's great.
so then is
Go
the
ahead.
answer AI coupled with Power BI? Just gonna throw that one out there because it's so.
Sure, something like that.
I'm not sure I like that because I like Power BI, but whenever I work with Power BI, I always get frustrated. But maybe the mistake I've been making is I have not been bringing my AI friend along with me. To that, would do you think that the future is providing the end user with the tools like that where they can just build it's like their own Lego set almost, but it spews cyber, and that's fun.
Yeah, I think, but we got to still have guardrails in place for many different reasons.
100%.
You can build graphs that are super cool and not true. You when
Oh,
I was at like graphs and maps, like I remember like you can make, the way maps can be manipulated, data can be manipulated. If you want to say like we have better cybersecurity outcomes than, XYZ company, yeah, sure. You can probably build yourself something in Power BI that makes it look that way. So I think within guardrails and within again, users I have deep empathy for end users in cybersecurity. They deal with tremendous amount of cognitive overload. And then the other side is they don't always know what they want, but we can help identify what they need. And then most of it, we can even go to 100% of needs, but we can aim for that. And then I do think some sort of like custom reporting or other types of interfaces that allow them to manipulate that in real time will help. Um, but I've seen some pretty funny, not even just in cybersecurity, where people are like, well, I'm going to build my own dashboard. And they come back and you're like, what? This might only make sense to them.
Like your example of maps there, but I will say, I don't know. I don't know if there are enough guardrails for maps. I've seen a guy just totally rename an entire Gulf once, and there was no guardrail whatsoever. I don't know. It's probably ancient history at this point. But one of the things that you have also discussed with us a little bit that I found very interesting, and Dustin and I talk about a lot, is quantum and the upcoming Q day, right? And all the things that that's going to apply to cybersecurity. Now, I'm probably a caveman with this opinion, but whenever we have clients come to us and say, well, I have to be ready for quantum, it's going to destroy all of our encryption. My immediate response was,
True.
where is your super cold fridge, right? Where is, because all these quantum computers need like close to absolute zero kind of levels of coldness, and we can create this whole, simulated quantum computer. Cool. I can also simulate really cool Photoshop pictures of me looking buff. Awesome. That's not the same as actually performing quantum. um do you think, with what we see out there, right? And I'm saying that's my opinion. I'm probably wrong. Whatever. From what you're seeing, because you do a lot of work with a lot of different clients and you see a lot of different perspectives while you're doing with this. What is your opinion on quantum? Do you think Q day is closer than most people realize, further than they realize? And what is the biggest thing that you find interesting about it as it's coming down the pipe? And also when? When's it
So,
going to happen?
oh, if I could predict that, like,
Right.
that would be
Right.
amazing. So, I have actually family and extended family that work at like EPFL and ETH in Switzerland. And so, like, this sort of quantum stuff is really super interesting to me and always has been. Wish my dad was still around to see this happening because it was sort of his like special interest too. So, I wish I could predict quantum. I can't. I do believe, though, that within cybersecurity and within product specifically, we can help people just get ready. I think it's a multi step process. There's stuff you can do beforehand so you're ready. And then I think there's a whole opportunity sort of post quantum, right? For me, when I think of quantum and I look at it from a cybersecurity product management lens, is that do people even have an inventory of that? Like of their data, their
No.
certificates? Like,
Yeah.
so step one, let's make it super
Yeah.
base. So why don't we just help them do that? And then once they have that inventory, which I think that's going to take up a lot of time, we might be waiting, a couple of years. But like, what are your certificates? What are your systems? Where's your data? Then the ones that matter, can you secure them? This is the other thing, right? They're just spread all over. We see this like, oh yeah, a certificate over here, and I think I've keys over here, and people don't know. Or it's that one engineer that knows everything, and like, so if he decides to retire, no one knows where to find it. So step
Mhm.
one is sort of like taking an approach, I think, in cybersecurity, and I think in product management, I see this as my burden, sort of a quantum safety roadmap of like, can you inventory first? Can you secure that inventory and even restrict access, right? Because that's the other thing. Someone's going to want to get at that. And then are people going to take the time to classify? Like, I think the assets or the information that is most at risk, right, is that long term stuff, the stuff that you need for next 10 years. Because then you're coming up against Q day. Like, if this is not gonna be relevant in a year, I don't think you gotta worry about, like, inventorying it, classifying it, and then really think about, like, what's going to, because the assumption that it's gonna break everything, that I don't believe is true, and you guys are actually better technical people around that. It's gonna break some things. You're gonna have to worry about TLS and VPN and signing, SSO and stuff like that. But man, if you inventory now, if you have good, I would say, like, hygiene, right? If you start doing the work now, but there's like, not that I'm aware of that there's any software that's doing that or would enable people to do that.
Yeah. So
So
back to basics, back to cybersecurity basics, right? That's the
absolutely,
seems to be the
absolutely.
answer.
I mean, it kind of shocks me because when we were talking about when people talk about it, what are you going to do if this thing really can? Like I liked your example. It's not going to wreck everything, but it's going to wreck a lot, especially when it comes to encryption. How do you even prep for that? Like, okay, I'm going to rotate my keys for something that'll happen in 20 years. That's doesn't. It's not going to. Okay, I'm still cooked. Then it's not. It's going to be. So it's going to take it 2 minutes instead of 1 minute to just then wreck everything. I like the focus then on the absolute basics that people a lot of times don't do. I want to. Why don't they do those basics in your opinion, Jen? Why don't people want to do asset management? Why do people, not believe in policies? Oh man, no one's got a policy for everything.
Right,
Well,
right.
what that I feel
People
like
are
that gets to
overwhelmed.
something. Yeah,
Cognitive load. I will come back to cognitive load. There's never enough people to do all the cybersecurity stuff that you want to do. So a lot of people carry a lot and they are going to naturally do the job or the job to be done that they believe is most important, whatever that might be. Okay. Your compliance people are like, we're not compliant. Like your SOC analysts are like, oh, we're missing detections. Like people just get very specialized. Um, and it's hard because oftentimes there's not enough money in an organization or a small to medium sized business, especially. But even the larger businesses don't invest in, like, we're taking a breath. Nobody wants to take a breath. Everyone wants to go. Right. And so we're running. We haven't taken a deep breath. We're running and we're sprinting. And I think quantum and basic fundamentals of cybersecurity is a marathon. Take deep breaths, pace yourself, do the fundamentals, regulate your breathing. I think that's the thing. We're all in a really big rush and understandable because the threats are real, right?
Hmm.
The threats are real. We are like trying to build the cyber resiliency. We know there's bad people and bad actors out there, and everyone's just like trying to do their best and they're in a sprint.
yeah, yeah. I think that's something that Dustin and I talk about a lot. That cybersecurity at the end of the day is a cost center, right? There's very few instances, unless you're a cybersecurity company, where cybersecurity will make you money. The whole idea is that it'll keep you safe, right? And it's really hard to help people understand that when something hasn't happened, which in a lot of instances something has happened, they just haven't noticed, right? And so I appreciate the perspective of the cognitive load, especially when it is a profession that can lead to a lot of burnout if not managed appropriately. That's why we really advocate self-care
100%.
and taking time to breathe. A lot of times one of the biggest signs of burnout is you don't even know you're burnt out, right? So I think that's a really good perspective on that.
Yeah, I feel like there is a lot of catastrophization that happens around new technology. We're currently in the middle of the AI catastrophization. We've been in the blockchain catastrophization, and the funny thing about Q Day that I've kind of noticed is, like, I remember probably 10 years ago, people being like, in 5 years, Q Day will happen, and now I'm like, okay, where'd that go? That came and went, right? And so I think NIST has some guidance on that. I think it's like 2036 is
Right,
when they
right.
think, like, that's when they're projecting it to hit. But even that, like, there are still some pretty substantial scientific discoveries and leaps that need to happen before that's even reached. And so I love your answer, Jen, because it is just like, if we stop and take a breath and we return to basics, then we will be prepared for whatever is going to come. And sure, now we have, because NIST started working on it, we have quantum uh, algorithms that are secure against quantum, right? That can protect against quantum even today. Which I still say, like, I'll believe when I see it, kind of thing. We got to wait till we actually
Yeah,
get there with quantum to
prove it.
see if it's going to work. But at least we're working on it now, right? So it's kind of like, all right, we're already ahead of the game. In the meantime, I did also feel like people use it as a reason to then not worry about what's going on right now. Where they're like,
Yeah,
oh, well, when quantum comes out, it's just going to wipe everything out. So, like, why are we worried about it? It's like, because it's not here yet, and it's going to be a very long time. Even when it does get here, it's still going to be a long time until it's commercialized, and then it's going to be a long time. There's so many facets that kind of go into this. So, but you're absolutely right. We're turning to basics, taking a breath, realizing where we're at, realizing where we're going. Those are really,
And
really
what
important
steps
things.
you can
I love
take.
that you said that.
And what
What's
steps
that?
you can take, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's still, like,
yeah,
this idea, like, can you just go back to, like, do you understand what part of your inventory would be vulnerable? It's not
yeah.
everything.
No,
So
yeah.
you have, taking small steps alleviates anxiety, right? Anxiety is not knowing the future. So we have this anxious stance. Um, we have this anxious stance about what is technology going to do? Oh my God. And because we're projecting so far into the future, instead of taking, like, what can I change in the moment now? Like, what do I actually have control of? You have control of your inventory. You have control how you want to secure that. You have control over who can see it, who should
Mhm.
see it, and how are you going to classify it. And these are steps you could take, but it's like anything fundamental, right? Like, it's like starting an exercise program or anything else. You just got to start with basics. People want to get to the other end very quickly. I think we're just so outcome based, like secure against quantum, instead of like, what are fundamental things I can do now that will build that layer. It's like, I lock my door every night. It doesn't mean that my house can't somehow, like, get destroyed in a different way. But I'm not going to not lock my door because I think some future state, all doors are going to be automatically unlocked. I don't know. That's a bad analogy, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
No, I get it.
I'm
I think
still
you
Yeah,
have
going
a
that's
to
good
actually a
take
pretty
argument.
good
I
analogy. It's pretty
my
effective.
gaming, like, even if there was like a Magneto who could like unlock all the doors like all at once, I'm still locking my door at night, you
Yeah,
know?
yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. You have given us some fantastic insight. I know I told Dustin I was really looking forward to this discussion, and this has been fantastic. I also want to say again, I apologize to any of our Swiss listeners for all the offense that I have
I think
probably
there's no
generated with
offense
my
there.
questions.
Yeah,
Okay,
no offense
good.
at all. Like,
But this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, and we'd love to have you back. Um, so in the meantime, to everyone watching and listening, you still haven't given us an effective what is that, catchphrase or motto? So stop this now. Turn off this podcast. I got nothing after that.
Yeah, now
Thank
turn
you
us
for
off.
listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.